So let's create our first provider. Inside the providers directory, let me create a new file and let's name it as telescope provider. So that will be a class telescope provider that will be mixed with change notifier. Before I declare properties inside that class, I need to register this provider in our widget tree. And for reference, our project will have multiple providers. So let's go to the main file. Where is our main.dart file? Okay, this one. So let's wrap this my app with a new widget, and that will be change notifier provider, not change notifier provider. Like I said before, that we will have multiple providers in our project. So this time I will use multi-provider, because multi-provider actually takes or requires a provider's argument, and it's a list, and inside this list we will actually add separate change notifier provider widgets for every provider class. So here I am adding a change notifier provider, and from here let's have the context, and from here I want to return our telescope provider class. So we'll have other providers like the order provider, the user provider. Order provider will handle all the order related queries and methods. User provider will handle or hold all the data associated with the user, and so on. Okay, let me just restart the application. Let's go to the telescope provider class, and inside this telescope provider class, let me have a list of type brand, and that will be a brand list, and initially it will be empty. Okay, and I have to import the brand class. And now let's call the methods for these two methods, add brand and get all brands. So first of all, let me define the method for adding the brands. So the return type will be future void. The method name could be add brand, and from here, or maybe we will not just pass the brand object from our widget class, we will simply pass the name of the brand, because we will just retrieve the name from our admin from a single text field widget. So after we get the name, then now it's time to create a brand object, and I'm passing the name, and now just return dbhelper dot add brand and pass the brand object. So I am creating a brand object and passing the name, and in this brand object I am not specifying any ID, and you see that whenever I'm passing this brand object to this dbhelper add brand, and now I'm creating a new document and I'm getting a document ID, and that ID will be assigned to the brand ID, and eventually the document or the brand information will be set to our new document. Okay, so now that we have our add brand method, let's define another method to retrieve all the brands. So the method name could be get all brands, and inside that method I'm going to call dbhelper dot get all brands, and you see this is not a future method, it's a stream, and for a stream we have another method called listen. For future we call the then method. That means whenever the future function is done with its job, then method is called. But for future, for stream, we have this listen method, and we get an event. That means it's actually the snapshot over here. And now we have an anonymous function, and the great thing about this listen function is whenever anything changed inside a particular collection, for example in this dbhelper we are actually putting a snapshot or putting an observer over this collection, that means collection brand. So we are setting an observer, and whenever this collection have a new document, or we remove any document from this collection, or we modify any document from this collection, this method, that means this listen method will be called, and every time for every changes we get a new snapshot. And now we have a snapshot, we need to retrieve the data, and we will expecting a list from this snapshot, because under the collection brand we can have multiple documents for multiple brands, and we will retrieve a list of brand, and we will assign this to this brand list. So let me use this brand list, and that will be we will create a new list. So list dot generate, and the length of the list will be the length of this snapshot. So that will be snapshot dot docs. We have a property called docs, and now length. So docs actually a list. So if there are 3 or 4 documents inside the brand collection, so the length would be 4. And from here we need to return a brand object, and this time we'll use this brand.from map function, and we need to provide the map. We have the index, we have the documents list, and now simply let me just call snapshot.docs and provide the index, and this will actually return, this thing actually returns a map. And then, sorry, this will not return a map, this will actually return a snapshot. And if I call data, that actually returns a map. Okay, so in this way we retrieve a list of brand from this snapshot and assign that list to this brand list. And the most important thing is we need to call notify listeners, and whenever we get a new snapshot, we get a new brand list, and we get our widgets notified, and our screen will be automatically updated. And now we need to call this get all brands method to fetch all the brands from database and to show the brands inside this all brands page inside a list view. So let's go to this let me remove some of this thing over here. So let me go to the brand page. So inside the brand page, we inside the as the body, we can have a consumer, because we need to consume that brand list from the Telescope Provider class. So a consumer, and we'll consume from Telescope Provider, and a builder. So from here we need to return a list view. List view dot builder. Let me rename this value to provider. So the item count will be provider dot brand list dot length, and as item builder, first of all let me get the brand object first. So final brand, that will be provider dot brand list, and the index. And now from here I'm just simply returning a list style, because I need to just show the name of the brand, and list style is enough for that. So as the title of the list style, I will have a text widget, and I will simply print the brand name. Okay, so if I now restart the application, nothing will happen, because we didn't call this get all brands method from anywhere in our app. So this list will be still empty, and even if we call this method, we'll still get an empty list, because right now in our database we don't have any collection called brand, and it will be generated whenever we actually call that add brand method. Okay, so we can handle this thing. If there are no brands, or there is no brand, then we should not just show this empty screen. We just can show some message like no brands found or no brands added, something like that. So let's go to the brand page, and simply we can actually check whether this brand list is empty or not. Or maybe from here, this list view, we can either return a list view, or we can either return a center with a text widget saying there is no brand. So we can do that by simply checking the length of this brand list. So provider dot brand list, if it is empty, then we can return a constant center widget, and if it is not empty, then we can return the list view. So let me align the code first. Okay, so as the child of the center, we can provide a text widget that says no brand found. Okay, so let me press hot restart and come back to this brand page to check whether we can see this no brand found text or not. So brands, it says no brands found. So now we need to call the get all brands method from our provider, but I think you are assuming that we need to call this method inside our brand page, and since it's a stateless widget, we need to call that method inside our build function. So before we return the scaffold, we can have a provider object by calling provider.of context listen false, then call the method, then return scaffold. But I don't want to call that provider function, that means get all brands, from inside the brand page. Why I don't want to call this method from brand page? Because I don't want to call the or make the queries over and over again in different pages, because we need the list of brands in the brands page. We also need the brands in our add telescope page whenever we will try to show all the brands in a drop down list. So if I keep calling the get method, that means this method over here, get all brands, if I keep querying the database, Firebase database method inside different pages, so we know that our database is not actually free. We saw the pricing that we can make 20,000 insert and delete operation per day for our Cloud Firestore database, and we can perform 50,000 read queries from our database. And it might seem like 20,000 read or 20,000 write operation is more than enough for a single day, or 50,000 read operation is more than enough for a single day. But when the user actually grows for your app, then you'll see that this quota will be finished by the end of the day. So we need to be very calculative in this way. In this case, we need to optimize the method calls or database calls, and that's why I need to call all the query methods, or I need to get all the data from our database at one place, and that ideal place would be our dashboard page, because whenever we launch our admin app, and if admin is logged in, then we go to the dashboard page, and dashboard page is the ideal page where we can actually make all the necessary method calls that fetches all the data. So whenever we have all the data, we store all the data in our provider class, and whichever widget needs the data, we just simply pass them from here. We don't need to make the queries over and over again, and this way we can actually optimize the number of calls or queries for our Cloud Firestore database. So inside our dashboard page, and since it's a stateful object, we can override the did change dependencies method, and from here I can have a provider object like provider dot of context and listen false. Let's mention the provider name, the telescope provider, and then call the get all brands. So as soon as we land to this dashboard, we will have all the brands ready, fetched and ready, and our telescope provider class will serve this brand data to any widget all over the app or during the life cycle of our app. So if I now restart our application once again, and our application has been restarted, and we're assuming that this method has been called, and this actually tried to fetch all the data, but we know that there are no data inside our database regarding brands. So if I go to the brand page, so the result is still same, no brands found. Now in the next lecture we will provide a button so that we can have a text field where admin will put the new brand name and save it, and that brand name will be saved to database, and our page will be automatically refreshed, and we'll see our new brand name as the item of our list view. So see you in the next lecture.